The study was silent except for the sound of breathing, shallow, frightened, a child's breathing that came in ragged gasps. Alessandro Calabrese knelt on the Persian rug, his tailored charcoal suit already creased from kneeling, his expensive Italian leather shoes planted firmly on wool that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He was 6'2", broad-shouldered, built like a man who had spent his life commanding rooms and bending wheels. His dark hair silvered at the temples. His eyes, storm grey and usually penetrating, were now red-rimmed and helpless. A thin scar ran from his left eye to his cheekbone, a souvenir from the night his father was murdered 32 years ago when Alessandro was just 16 years old. That night had birthed an empire built on vengeance. This night was birthing something else entirely. Something that looked like fear. His 7-year-old son Oliver stood before him, trembling, clutching his head with both small hands. "Dad, my head hurts. Dad, it hurts so bad." The words came out in a whimper that cracked something fundamental inside Alessandro's chest. Beside Oliver stood his twin brother, Daniel, his eyes wide and terrified, his small body pressed against the mahogany bookcase as if trying to disappear into the wood. Alessandro reached for Oliver's shoulder. The moment his hand made contact, the boy flinched violently, jerking away with such force that he stumbled backward. That flinch. That single, instinctive terror of touch. It told Alessandro everything he needed to know. Everything he did not want to know. In the doorway, Vinny and Franco stood frozen. Vinny was thick-necked, 43 years old, with a broken nose that had never healed straight and eyes like black glass. Franco was leaner, younger by 5 years, with a gold tooth that caught the light when he swallowed. Both men had worked for Alessandro for over a decade. Both had seen him order executions without changing his expression. Both had watched him dismantle business rivals and leave them begging for death instead of the slow financial ruin he preferred. In 15 years, neither man had ever seen him helpless. They did not know what to do with a boss whose hands were trembling. The clock on the study wall ticked past 2:36 in the morning. Then the door opened. She walked through it like she had been summoned instead of invited, like she had every right to be in the private study of the most dangerous man in Philadelphia in the middle of the night. Mia Reynolds. 27 years old but looking decades older. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a loose bun that had begun falling apart during her shift. Her eyes were pale blue, the kind of blue that suggested she had cried so much over the years that her eyes had learned to give up tears. She wore her diner uniform still, a white short-sleeved shirt stained with coffee and marinara, an apron that had been white 8 years ago and now existed in some undefined shade between gray and brown. Her orthopedic shoes were worn through at the heel. A price tag would have read $2.17 in her pocket. That was all the money she had left in the world. She did not ask permission. She did not pause to acknowledge Vinny or Franco or the fact that she stood in a room with a man who could erase people from existence with a single phone call. She simply knelt beside Oliver, her movement slow and deliberate, like she was approaching a wounded animal that might bolt. She had spent her life learning how to move around fear without triggering it. "Hey, buddy," she said, her voice trembling like a candle in the wind. "Can I look at your head?" Oliver nodded slightly. His small hand reached out and took Mia's hand. The gesture was so simple, so devastating in its trust, that Alessandro had to turn away for a moment. Mia's calloused fingers, fingers that had been burned on hot plates, cut on broken glass, worked raw from washing dishes for tips that never materialized, gently lifted the edge of Oliver's shirt. What she revealed made every man in the room go absolutely still. Bruises covered the child's ribs. Not scattered, not accidental. Systematic. Perfect handprints in varying stages of healing. Purple melting into yellow, melting into green. A timeline of terror written on a 7-year-old's body like evidence of a crime nobody was supposed to witness. The bruises spread across his ribs like a map of hell itself. Mia's breath caught audibly. Her hand trembled as she lowered the shirt back down, her fingers lingering protectively on the fabric, as if she could cover up the evidence of so much pain. Alessandro's face drained of color. The scar on his cheekbone seemed to deepen, to darken. His jaw clenched so hard that the muscle beneath his skin visibly pulsed. When he finally spoke, his voice came out low and solid like an oath spoken over a grave. Who? It was not a question. Mia rose slowly, her knees protesting. She looked at Alessandro, and what she saw in his face made her understand, in that moment, that she was looking at a man who had just received a death sentence, not his own, but the death sentence of whoever had done this. She did not know that Alessandro Calabrese had spent 32 years building an empire on the principle that certain transgressions required responses so methodical, so total, that they erased not just a person but the very memory of their existence. His mother told me when I picked him up from school, Mia said quietly. She said he fell. But children who fall don't flinch when someone touches their shoulder. The room seemed to contract around them. The air grew thick and heavy. Outside, the Philadelphia night pressed against the windows, humid, suffocating, the kind of August heat that made everything sticky and slow. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm wailed and then cut off abruptly. Franco made a small movement toward his phone. Alessandro raised one hand, a gesture so minute it was almost invisible, and Franco froze. The message was clear. Do nothing. Wait. Mia turned to Daniel, the other twin, and crouched down so her eyes were level with his. Did someone hurt your brother? She asked gently. Daniel's lip trembled. He looked at his father, then back at Mia, and nodded. Who, sweetheart? Our mom's new boyfriend, Daniel whispered. He said we were being loud. He said we needed to learn to behave. The sound that came from Alessandro was not quite human. It was low and terrible, like the growl of something ancient waking from a long sleep. He stood abruptly, his movements precise and controlled in the way that violent men learn to move when violence is their first language. Every muscle in his body had gone rigid. The gold watch on his left wrist caught the lamplight, a Patek Philippe worth more than a luxury car. Vinny and Franco exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Neither man moved. Neither man even breathed. Mia straightened slowly, her eyes on Alessandro. She had spent years learning to read dangerous men. She had developed an instinct for when a man was about to explode. She could feel it now, the coiled tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had formed fists at his sides, the deliberate control he was exerting just to remain standing. The boys need to sleep, she said, her voice steady despite the way her hands shook slightly. They need to know they are safe now. Alessandro looked at her. For a long moment, he simply looked at her, this woman he had been watching for 3 months without her knowledge, this woman who had stepped between violence and a stranger outside a diner in July, this woman who had shown more courage in that moment than most people showed in their entire lives. He looked at her standing there in her ruined uniform and her worn shoes with her pocket holding exactly $2.17, and something shifted in his expression. The rage did not disappear. Rage does not disappear in men like Alessandro Calabrese. But it crystallized into something colder. Something more dangerous. Something patient. He nodded once. Vinny. Take them upstairs. Rosa will stay with them. No one, and I mean no one, leaves this house without my permission. Vinny moved immediately, his thick hands surprisingly gentle as he guided the twins toward the door. Oliver looked back at Mia. Daniel looked back at Mia. Both boys reached for her with their eyes. She smiled at them, a smile that cost her everything, and waved slightly. The gesture said what her voice could not, you are safe now. When the door closed behind them, the study became a tomb. Alessandro turned to Franco. Find Preston Mercer. Find out every place he has been for the last month. I want to know what he ate for breakfast. I want to know whose bed he slept in. I want to know every conversation he has had. And I want this information in the next 2 hours. Franco was already moving, already dialing. His voice, when he spoke into the phone, was quiet and urgent. Within seconds, the machinery of the Calabrese organization was stirring awake. Men who had been sleeping would be awakened. Surveillance footage would be pulled. Phone records would be accessed. The vast and terrible network of power that Alessandro had spent 3 decades building was being redirected toward a single purpose, the destruction of whoever had laid a hand on his sons. But what neither Vinny nor Franco understood, what even Alessandro did not fully understand in that moment, was that the real threat did not come from Preston Mercer alone. Preston was muscle. Preston was a man who needed money and would do anything for it. Somewhere above Preston, someone was pulling strings. Someone with power of a different kind. Someone with connections that ran through the wealthy parts of Philadelphia like roots through soil. Someone named Victoria Ashford, a woman with a family name that traced back to the city's founding, a woman with enough social influence to make people disappear in ways that had nothing to do with guns or bodies. A woman who had orchestrated this entire situation for reasons that would not become clear until everything had already begun to fall apart. For now, Alessandro simply stood alone in his study, breathing hard, his scar seeming to pulse with its own heartbeat. Outside, the Philadelphia night pressed against the windows. In one of the city's most violent neighborhoods, a man named Preston Mercer was about to learn that he had made a catastrophic mistake. In a sticker-floored diner on the edge of the city, a waitress named Mia Reynolds was about to discover that the past she thought she had escaped was about to come roaring back. And in a penthouse office overlooking the Delaware River, a woman named Victoria Ashford was about to realize that her plan, so carefully constructed, so meticulously executed, had just encountered an obstacle she had not planned for. The clock on the study wall ticked toward 3 a.m. Everything was about to change. Now let us go back. Let us return to where this story truly began, not in a mansion filled with privilege and power, but in a diner where a woman with $2 in her pocket was about to meet a man who could buy the entire city if he wanted to. Let us go back to 3:22 in the morning on a humid August night, to the moment when Mia Reynolds stood face to face with Preston Mercer in the parking lot outside her work, when she made a choice that would echo forward through the next 3 months and change everything. 3 hours earlier. The diner sits between a boarded-up pharmacy and a check-cashing place, neon bleeding red and white into the humid darkness. Metro Diner. The sign has flickered since 2004. Inside, the black and white checkered floor sticks under Mia Reynolds's orthopedic shoes, worn through at the heel, held together with duct tape wrapped tight, and she does not notice anymore. 8 years of graveyard shifts have worn the noticing right out of her. She is 27 years old and looks 35. The clock above the register reads 3:22 a.m. August humidity sits thick in the air like something that refuses to leave, and Mia moves through the diner with the practiced efficiency of someone who has wiped down these same booths 10,000 times. Her uniform, faded blue polyester stained with coffee rings that never come clean, clings to her skin. The name tag still reads Mia even though the M has faded to almost nothing, leaving only IA in black marker. She does not bother fixing it. Nobody reads name tags at 3 in the morning anyway. The diner is nearly empty. A man in a corner booth sits alone, nursing black coffee he has not touched. He has been coming here for 6 weeks. Always the same booth. Always the same order. Always watching her move between tables with eyes the color of storm clouds, dark and penetrating. She tries not to notice him. Trying not to notice things is a skill she has perfected. Mia counts the bills from her apron pocket as she wipes down the counter. $2. Crumpled. Worn soft from handling. One is missing a corner. That is her tip money for the entire shift. That is her tip money for all 3 shifts this week. She stares at the bills like they might multiply if she looks hard enough. They do not. They never do. In 5 days, Preston Mercer will come collecting. $150,000. Money she borrowed 17 months ago when he promised it would solve everything. Money borrowed at interest rates that made mathematicians weep. Money that has somehow grown teeth and is eating her from the inside out. She does not have $150,000. She does not have $15,000. She has $2 and a job that pays minimum wage and tips that amount to loose change. The man in the corner booth watches her hand shake as she tucks the bills into her apron pocket. He does not look away. His name is Alessandro Calabrese. Outside in the black SUV parked at the curb with its engine running, two men named Vinny and Franco sit in the front seat, playing cards, waiting. They have been waiting for 6 weeks. Their boss does not explain himself. He simply appears at 11 p.m. and says Metro Diner, and they drive him there and they wait. They do not ask questions. Questions get you killed in Alessandro's line of work, or they get you demoted, or they get you reassigned to some warehouse in Jersey where the only thing you manage is inventory. Mia does not know who Alessandro Calabrese is. She does not know that his name carries weight in Philadelphia the way gravity carries weight on Earth. She sees him as just another customer. Older. Expensive suit, charcoal gray, tailored, the fabric worth more than everything she owns combined. Hands that have never worked a 9-to-5 in his life. A scar that runs from his left eye down to his cheekbone like a blade had once tried to cut his face clean off his skull. She does not wonder about the scar. She does not wonder about anything. Wondering requires energy she does not have. She pours him more coffee even though his cup is still full, a habit from 8 years of diner work. He says nothing. He never says anything. He watches her pour the coffee with the same expression he always wears, patient, observant, like he is cataloguing the way she moves. The way she scans the exits. The way her jaw clenches when the bell on the door chimes and she goes rigid for just a moment before forcing her shoulders to relax. The man in the corner booth reminds her of a predator that has learned patience. This thought terrifies her, which is absurd, because he has never done anything but sit there. He has never raised his voice. He has never threatened anything. But there is something about him that makes her skin go tight and her breathing shallow, something that reminds her that the world contains dangers that do not announce themselves with loud voices. The manager, a man named Ron who has been operating on approximately 3 cigarettes and black coffee for the past 30 years, emerges from the back office. Trash, he says. It is not a request. It is the sound of his voice that has been the only constant in her life since she was 19 years old and walked in asking for work. Ron does not care if she is dying. Ron cares that the trash gets taken out before the smell gets worse. Mia ties up the garbage bag, the plastic stretching tight around days' worth of coffee grounds, spoiled milk, bread crusts that nobody wanted. The bag weighs almost nothing. She carries almost nothing. She thinks about this as she walks toward the back door, through the kitchen where the grill sits cold and dark, where the fluorescent lights hum with a sound like insects dying. The back door opens into an alley. The alley opens into a world that is still awake even at 3:48 a.m., even though most of Philadelphia is dreaming. Thunder rumbles somewhere distant. The humidity has changed. The air tastes like rust and the promise of rain coming soon. Mia walks toward the dumpster, and that is when she hears it, a sound like a fist connecting with something soft. A whimper. A girl's voice, young, terrified, saying please over and over. Mia stops. She should not stop. She should throw the trash and return to the diner and count her $2 and think about how she is going to survive the next 5 days. Instead, she sets the bag down. She moves toward the sound. Behind the dumpster, crouched against the brick wall, is a girl. Maybe 16. Her lip is split, bleeding. Her left eye is beginning to swell. 2 men in leather jackets stand in front of her, blocking any escape. One of them, tattooed shoulders, missing teeth, holds a knife. The blade catches the diner's neon light and throws it back in sharp red slices. Nothing to see here, the man says. He does not look at Mia. He thinks she is not important enough to look at. Go back inside. Mia's hands shake. Her mouth goes dry. Every instinct built from 27 years of survival screams at her to obey, to return to the diner, to let this happen the way things happen to people like this girl in alleys behind diners in neighborhoods where nobody investigates crimes because the crimes never stopped. Her back burns, old scars from old hands, old violence that taught her to submit, to survive by disappearing. She opens her mouth anyway. Leave her alone. The words come out barely louder than breathing. The man with the knife laughs. The sound echoes off the brick walls like something alive. His friend moves toward Mia, his fist already rising. The girl whimpers again, pressing herself harder against the brick, her entire body shaking. Then a voice cuts through the alley like a blade through silence. The lady said leave. The accent is Italian. The tone is not a request. It is the tone of a man who has never, in his entire life, needed to raise his voice to be obeyed. Alessandro Calabrese stands at the mouth of the alley. Behind him, the humid night presses against the city like a hand pressing down on a chest. The man with the knife sees Alessandro's face and the color drains from his own face entirely. Both men move at once, scrambling over each other in their rush to escape, the knife clattering against the pavement and skittering away into the dark. Silence settles into the alley like dust. The girl stays pressed against the wall, not moving, not believing she is safe. Mia stays frozen, her hands still shaking. Alessandro stands motionless, his dark eyes moving from the girl to Mia and back again, cataloguing injuries, assessing threat levels, calculating what needs to happen next. This is what he does. This is who he is. He calculates. Go, he says to the girl. Not unkind. Just direct. Go home. Stay inside. If they come back, you call the police. The girl does not need to be told twice. She scrambles up and runs past both of them, disappearing into the humid darkness without looking back. Now it is just Mia and Alessandro. The alley. The dumpster. The abandoned garbage bag. The knife lying on the pavement like evidence of something that should not have happened here, in this moment, between two people who should not have any reason to intersect. I did not need your help, Mia says. Her voice sounds strange to her own ears, smaller than she is, fragmented like something that has been broken and glued back together imperfectly. Alessandro studies her the way he studies everything, as if she is a puzzle he intends to solve. I know, he says. He does not move closer. He does not smile. He simply stands there, watching her with those dark eyes, and there is something in his face, a crack in the stone wall of his expression, that makes her breath catch in her chest. Who are you? She asks. He does not answer. He simply turns and walks back toward the diner, back toward the corner booth and the cold coffee, back toward the life he was leading before he walked out into an alley and changed something neither of them understands yet. Mia stands alone in the humidity, her heart still racing, her hands still shaking, holding a bag of trash and a secret she knows she can never tell anyone. Behind her, the diner hums with the sound of fluorescent lights. Ahead of her, the alley stretches into darkness. And inside her chest, something has shifted. Something has changed. She does not know it yet, but her invisible life is about to end. The marble foyer of Alessandro's estate stretches before Mia like a cathedral built from frozen tears. Her threadbare coat hangs on her like surrender. The worn heels of her shoes squeak against the polished floor, a sound like something fragile breaking. Vinny and Franco stand motionless in the entryway, their black suits pressed to perfection, their eyes tracking her the way wolves track movement. 15 years. 15 years of watching Alessandro Calabrese rule this city with the kind of quiet that makes people listen, and in all that time, neither man had ever witnessed him invite a woman into this house. Not socially. Not like this. Not with the kind of care in his voice when he'd issued the invitation. Footsteps descend the staircase. Alessandro appears at the landing, and the afternoon light catches him in a way that makes him look carved from shadows and expensive tailoring. His charcoal suit fits him like it was stitched onto his body. His white shirt is open at the collar, revealing the edge of a scar running down his chest like a knife wound that had learned to speak Italian. His eyes, dark as burnt coffee, find hers immediately and do not look away. Thank you for coming, he says. His voice moves through the space like honey poured into silence. Mia's chin lifts. She has learned that dignity is the last thing they can take from you, and she will not surrender it to marble floors or men who wear power like cologne. You're paying me $500 for 4 hours, she says. The number hangs in the air between them like evidence. I would come anywhere for that. Something moves across his face. Not quite a smile. Something closer to recognition. He descends the remaining steps slowly, deliberately. Each movement is controlled, practiced, the kind of movement a man learns when violence has been his companion since childhood. The kitchen is through here, he says, gesturing toward the hallway. The caterers arrive at 6. I need the dining room prepared for 12 guests. Mia follows him through corridors lined with paintings that cost more than her annual salary. Her eyes touch them like prayers she will never speak aloud. One canvas shows a man who looks like Alessandro might look in 20 years, sharp-featured, powerful, but with something broken in the set of his jaw. A photograph sits on a console table in an ornate silver frame. 2 identical boys, dark-haired, 7 years old, their eyes too serious for children so young. Your sons? Mia asks. Alessandro pauses. Oliver and Marcus, he says quietly. They're with their tutor this afternoon. But you'll meet them later. They come down for dinner. The kitchen is all stainless steel and granite, a space designed by someone who believes food should be prepared with the precision of a military operation. Mia ties an apron, crisp white, nothing like the stained one from the diner, over her worn dress. Her hands move through the work with the kind of muscle memory that comes from 8 years of knowing exactly where everything goes. 2 hours pass. Then 3. The dining room transforms under her hands. Silver gleams like moonlight caught in metal. Crystal glasses stand in perfect rows. The table stretches across the room like a battlefield waiting for negotiation. Through the kitchen pass and around corners, she catches glimpses of men arriving, men in suits that cost more than her entire wardrobe, men who move with the comfortable arrogance of people who have never questioned their own power. At 5:30, Marco arrives with a girl no older than 19, red-headed, terrified. Mia recognizes the expression on her face because she has worn it herself. Fear has a particular shape when it lives in your chest. This is Sarah, Marco says to Alessandro. She's been helpful with information about Preston Mercer's operations. Alexandra's jaw tightens. He looks at Sarah with something approaching gentleness. You're safe here, he says. It is not a promise made lightly. But what Mia does not know is that Sarah had called her social worker in tears the week before, mentioning Preston's name, his threats, his forged documents. What she does not know is that Alessandro's surveillance had picked up that phone call within hours. What she does not know is that the walls surrounding Preston Mercer are closing inward, stone by stone, and he cannot feel it yet. At 6:15, Oliver and Marcus appear in the kitchen doorway. They are smaller in person than in the photograph. Childhood is always smaller than memory allows. Oliver's eyes find Mia first. He studies her the way his father studies everything, as if she is a puzzle he intends to solve. Why are you here? Oliver asks. Not suspicious. Curious. The way children ask questions before they learn to hide them. I'm helping your father prepare dinner, Mia says, her voice softer than it's been in years. Would you like to help? Marcus shakes his head and retreats into the hallway. But Oliver stays. He pulls a stool to the counter and watches as Mia assembles ingredients for tiramisu, the layers of cream and coffee and cocoa powder building like memories stacking on top of each other. Do you like our father? Oliver asks. Mia's hands still for one breath. Then 2. I don't know your father, she says carefully. He watches you at the diner, Oliver says. When he thinks no one's looking. For 3 weeks, he comes back to the same booth. I follow him sometimes. It makes him sad, watching you. Mia's throat tightens. She does not speak. She continues layering the dessert with the kind of precision that requires all of her focus. By 7 o'clock, the dining room glows with candlelight. The table overflows with food, fresh pasta, braised meats, vegetables roasted until their edges caramelize into gold. Mia moves through the space like a ghost, efficient and invisible, exactly as she has been trained to be. The men talk in low voices, their conversations laced with the particular vocabulary of people who deal in threats and consequence. Real estate acquisitions. Business interests. Concerns about law enforcement. Names that Mia recognizes from newspaper headlines she reads in the diner at 3 in the morning. It is past 9 when she finishes clearing the last plate. The guests have begun to disperse, conversations moving into Alessandro's study, doors closing on confidences she will never hear. The kitchen is quiet now except for the sound of water running hot over dishes. Her hands move through the soapy water like they belong to someone else, someone who exists in a world where a $500 payment can feel like salvation. You can leave the dishes. Alessandro's voice behind her makes her freeze. She does not turn around. She has learned that sometimes stillness is the safest response. They have a dishwasher, he says. More than one. Several, actually. Too many for one man. Mia finally turns. He stands in the kitchen doorway in his shirt sleeves now, the formal jacket discarded. The scar on his chest catches the light. He looks younger without the armor of his suit, and also older, as if power had aged him from the inside out. The boys asked if you would return, he says. Oliver specifically. He said the tiramisu was better than what the regular chef makes, and that you hummed while you worked, and that humming means there is still music in the world. Mia's hands are dripping. Water pools on the limestone floor. Oliver said that. He observes things, Alessandro says. He moves into the kitchen slowly, the way you approach an animal you do not want to startle. And he is rarely wrong. You need to send me home, Mia says. The words are correct. The safety response. The right choice. This is, we are worlds apart. Yes, Alessandro agrees. You live in a diner serving coffee that tastes like rust to men who will never see you. And I live in a house made from stone and old money, raising 2 boys who have learned that silence means safety. He steps closer. But 3 weeks ago you threw yourself between Preston Mercer and a child you didn't know. You stood in an alley holding a knife at chest height with hands that shake from poverty, not fear. That is not a world apart thing, Mia. That is a choice apart. A character apart. She should leave. Every survival instinct screaming in her blood tells her to take the $500 he promised, disappear into the humid Philadelphia night, and forget that Alessandro Calabrese exists. But Oliver's voice echoes in her mind, everyone else leaves. I have 2 days, she whispers. The words escape before she can contain them. Preston said he wants the money in 2 days. I have $2 in my pocket, and I am worth nothing, and there is no one who can help me. Alessandro's expression shifts. Something dark and protective moves across his face like a storm cloud gathering. Tell me everything, he says. And in the quiet kitchen of a mansion she will never own, surrounded by luxury she will never understand, Mia Reynolds begins to speak her truth to a man who has learned to listen to the things people don't say out loud. 3 blocks away, in a glass penthouse office, Victoria Ashford's fingernails tap against mahogany as Preston Mercer leans back in a leather chair that costs more than Mia's entire apartment building. She's terrified, Preston says. His smile is a weapon. I saw her at the diner yesterday. She's already starting to break. 2 days, she'll do whatever I ask. Victoria's eyes are ice and calculation. See that she does, she says. I have far too much invested in our arrangement for some broken waitress to create complications. Outside, thunder rolls across the Philadelphia sky. Rain begins to fall in sheets. And in Alessandro's kitchen, Mia speaks words she has never spoken to another human being, each one a door opening that cannot be closed again. 24 hours before Preston's deadline, at 4:07 in the morning, Mia Reynolds stands on the Benjamin Franklin Bridge. The rain falls in sheets, hammering down so hard it sounds like bullets striking concrete. The humid August air has finally broken open, releasing everything it has been holding. She is soaked through. Her stained apron clings to her body like a second skin. Her orthopedic shoes, the ones with heels worn through at the back, squeak against the wet metal grating beneath her feet. The Delaware River churns below. Dark. Cold. Indifferent. Her hands grip the railing. white-knuckled, shaking. Rain streams down her face, or is it tears? She no longer knows the difference. 8 years of terror. 8 years of survival on $2 a day. 8 years of carrying a torn college acceptance letter that represents the life Preston stole from her. The thoughts spiral like wind through the canyon of the bridge. $2. That is all she possesses. Preston wins again. He always wins. Nobody believes you. Nobody saves you. Nobody even knows your name. Her fingers loosen slightly on the wet metal. One step. That is all it would take. The rain tastes like rust and blood and cigarette smoke and every single backhand that taught her that her body belonged to someone else. Then her pocket buzzes. A text message. From Oliver's phone. Alessandro's number saved in it. Will you make grilled cheese tomorrow? 5 words. A child's hope. A small hand reaching toward tomorrow. Mia's grip tightens on the railing. She steps back from the edge. Collapses against the concrete, her entire body breaking open. Rain hammers down on her shoulders. She sobs in a way she has not allowed herself to sob since she was 16 years old and realized that no one was coming to save her. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out the torn acceptance letter. The edges are soft from 8 years of handling, 8 years of carrying proof of the person she could have been. She holds it against her chest. The ink has run from rain and tears and time, but she can still read the words, "Congratulations, Mia Reynolds. We are pleased to offer you admission. Not tonight. Not like this. Not when there is a child sleeping in a mansion miles away who believes that tomorrow will arrive." Mia forces herself to stand. Her legs shake. She walks home through the storm, one foot in front of the other, her wet shoes splashing through puddles that reflect the orange glow of the streetlights. She does not know that while she walks, everything is shifting. At 6:04 a.m., in a luxury apartment in Center City, 12 men in black tactical gear move through the hallway like ghosts. No sound except the soft click of boots on marble. No conversation. They have done this before. They know what comes next. Alessandro stands in the doorway. His face is carved from ice. His eyes hold the color of a winter sky. Vinny stands to his left, Franco to his right, their hands resting on their weapons with the casual certainty of men who have never had to use them twice. Preston Mercer wakes to find Alessandro sitting in a leather chair beside his bed. The chair costs $14,000. Preston owns nothing of equal value in his entire life. "You made a mistake," Alessandro says. His voice is deep and solid like an oath, like a door closing that will never open again. "You hurt someone under my protection." Preston's hand moves toward the nightstand. Toward the gun he keeps in the drawer. Franco is faster. The barrel of his weapon presses against Preston's temple with the gentleness of someone placing a hand on a child's forehead. "Don't," Franco says quietly. His voice contains all the finality of an execution. Alessandro pulls out a tablet. The screen glows in the darkness. He presses play. Video footage. High quality. Timestamp, 3 weeks ago. Preston in the parking lot behind Mia's diner. His hand around her throat. His mouth moving with threats that make the sound quality of the recording almost unnecessary. You can read his lips and see the terror in her eyes. The video cuts. New scene. Preston meeting with Victoria Ashford in an upscale restaurant. Their conversation about destroying Mia's credibility. Their laughter. Their casual cruelty. More footage. Preston forging documents. Falsifying her employment records. Creating evidence that does not exist. This goes live in 30 seconds, Alessandro says quietly, on every news station in Philadelphia. Every network. Every platform. But before it does, you are going to call her and apologize. Preston's hands shake. His voice comes out as a whisper, then as a plea. "You can't, I have connections, people who will." Had Alessandro corrects. His eyes do not blink. Your cop friends were arrested in a federal raid 40 minutes ago. 8 of them. FBI has been watching for 3 months. Victoria Ashford is in custody. She is cooperating. She is telling them everything. The color drains from Preston's face. It happens in seconds. The blood retreats from his skin. His mouth opens and closes like a fish pulled from water, searching for air that will not come. "You are alone," Alessandro says. He nods to Franco. Franco presses a phone into Preston's hand. Preston's fingers shake so badly he can barely hold it. He scrolls to Mia's number. His thumb hovers over the screen. "Call," Alessandro says. Preston calls. Mia answers on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep and recent tears. "Hello? Mia." Preston's voice is destroyed. "Mia, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hurt you. I threatened you. I lied about you. I ruined." Mia hangs up. The video goes live at 6:17 a.m. By 6:02 a.m., it has been shared 47,000 times. By 7:44 a.m., 340,000 times. Local news stations interrupt their morning broadcasts. The story crawls across the bottom of screens in every diner, every waiting room, every home where someone is sipping coffee and watching the world turn. Preston's photograph appears on every screen with a single word beneath it: arrested. At that same hour, in a ballroom at the Philadelphia Ritz-Carlton, Victoria Ashford stands in a white gown worth $23,000, holding a champagne flute worth $300, at a charity gala for the Women's Foundation. FBI agents enter from 3 different doors. The music stops. Victoria's hand freezes mid-gesture. Her eyes dart toward the exits, calculating, always calculating. But the exits are gone. The agents move toward her with the unhurried certainty of people who have already won. Victoria Ashford. An agent holds up credentials. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, witness intimidation, and money laundering." Victoria's mouth opens. Closes. Opens again. The sound that comes out is barely human, a protest, a denial, a scream that has nowhere to land. She tries to move backward, but there is nowhere to go. The ballroom, the luxury, the carefully curated social position, it all collapses in an instant. The cameras are everywhere. Photographers. News crews. Every second is captured. Every moment of her descent becomes evidence of the universe's correction. Her lawyer abandons her in the lobby. "I cannot help you," he says simply. Victoria is led out in handcuffs. Her Chanel suit is rumpled. One of her pearl earrings is missing. Her hair, styled that morning by a professional, is askew. The photographers shout questions that blur into one continuous roar. The video of her arrest goes viral within moments. At the diner, at 7:34 a.m., Mia watches the news on the television mounted above the counter. The sound is low, but the images are clear. Preston's face. His mugshot. The charges scrolling beneath it. Then Victoria's arrest, caught in real time, unfolding like a live execution broadcast into millions of homes. The anchor's voice, in what authorities are calling a systematic pattern of fraud and abuse targeting vulnerable women across Philadelphia, federal agents have arrested 12 individuals connected to Preston Mercer and Victoria Ashford, including 4 Philadelphia police officers accused of deliberately ignoring reports of assault. Mia's coffee cup trembles in her hands. The ceramic is warm, but her hands are cold from the inside out. Her phone rings. Alessandro's voice arrives like dawn breaking through darkness. "It is over. He cannot hurt you anymore." Preston Mercer, 40 years in federal prison. Victoria Ashford, 35 years. Every asset seized. Every connection burned. Every person who stood with them has already disappeared. Mia cannot speak. Words refuse to form. Instead, she cries. 8 years of terror finally releasing from her body like water breaking through a dam. Her coworker, Rosa, puts down her spatula and walks around the counter to hold her. He is gone, Mia whispers. He is actually gone. He is gone, Alessandro confirms. His voice carries a weight that makes it clear this is not only about Preston. This is about every man who thought he could own another human being. This is about the correction of a universe that had tilted too far toward cruelty. Come home, Alessandro says. Oliver is asking if you will make grilled cheese for breakfast. He has already drawn you a picture. Mia closes her eyes. Her eyes. Oliver? A child? A future? She says yes. 6 months had passed since the morning Mia watched Preston Mercer's face dissolve into a mugshot on a diner television. 6 months since Victoria Ashford's arrest unfolded like a live broadcast across every news channel in Pennsylvania. 6 months since the silence finally came. The apartment was small. 3 rooms. A kitchen with counters that didn't slope. A bathroom where the lock actually turned from the inside. A bedroom with windows that faced east, toward the sunrise, where she no longer jolted awake at 3 in the morning convinced footsteps were crossing her floor. The rent was $480 a month. She could afford it now. On her kitchen counter sat 2 framed objects side by side. The first was the torn college acceptance letter, the one she had found in that mailbox 8 years ago, the letter that told her she was accepted to Temple University but she had chosen survival instead. The paper was fragile as tissue now, creased 1,000 times from being unfolded and refolded in moments of despair. The second frame held a new envelope, cream-colored, official. Her acceptance to night classes at Temple University, beginning in the fall. Full scholarship. Merit-based. She had earned it herself. Mia stood in front of these 2 frames every morning with her coffee. She did not cry anymore when she looked at them. Instead, something warm moved through her chest, like sunlight breaking through clouds that had covered the sky for years. The community center job had saved her. 40 hours a week helping other women navigate the systems that had nearly swallowed her whole. Restraining orders, emergency housing, job training programs, therapy resources. She knew every pathway now because she had crawled through them herself. Her supervisor, a woman named Dr. Helen Okonkwo, had told her 3 weeks ago that the board wanted to create a position just for her. Victim advocate and case manager. Salary starting at $38,000 a year. She had not answered immediately. Instead, she had gone home and counted the money in her savings account. $4,217. The number felt impossible. Real. Concrete proof that the woman who once counted change for groceries had become someone else entirely. The telephone rang at 6 in the evening. She was folding laundry, Oliver's small shirts and pants arranged in a pile on her bed. The boy had been living with Alessandro full-time now for 3 months. His mother had surrendered custody rather than face the judge with a court date looming. The relief in her eyes at signing the papers had been unmistakable. Alessandro's voice arrived before any greeting. That was how he communicated now, like the preamble of politeness was too expensive for a man who had reorganized his entire existence in half a year. Will you come to dinner tomorrow? Oliver will not stop asking if you are making the grilled cheese. I'll make it, Mia said. She was smiling already, and he could probably hear it in her voice. 7 o'clock, he said. Wear the blue dress if you still have it. The line went quiet. Not disconnected. Just silent in that particular way that meant he was holding the phone and thinking about something he did not have words for yet. I have it, Mia whispered. He hung up without saying goodbye. They never said goodbye anymore. The estate looked different in September light. Softer somehow, though nothing physical had changed. The marble columns were the same. The black iron gates were the same. But the roses bloomed differently when you walked through them as a guest choosing to be there rather than a terrified woman being carried inside. Vinny and Franco greeted her at the door. Their eyes moved across her blue dress, her straightened spine, her face unmarked by fear. Vinny nudged Franco with the smallest movement of his shoulder. Both men had watched Alessandro for 15 years. They had seen him kill men. They had seen him rebuild empires. But in 6 months, he had transformed in ways that made them exchange glances whenever he thought no one was looking. Oliver arrived before dinner was served. He was 5 years old and he had stopped flinching at loud noises. His hair had grown back thicker since the spring. He threw his arms around Mia's waist and did not let go until his brother, Dante, 3 years old and sticky with juice from the afternoon, came stumbling behind him wanting equal time. "Vivi, you came. You promised you would come." Oliver pulled her hand. "Will you sit next to me?" She sat next to him. Alessandro sat across from them, watching his son watch her with the kind of intensity that children possess. At one point, Oliver announced that the pasta was the best pasta in the world, and Mia laughed at the absolute certainty in his voice. Alessandro watched her laugh. Something in his chest shifted, recognizable and terrifying. After dinner, when the boys were upstairs with their nanny watching a film, Mia and Alessandro walked into the garden. The September air was cooling, carrying the first whisper of autumn. The scent of roses mixed with the smell of cut grass and distant rain still hours away from reaching the ground. "Why did you really come to the diner that night?" Mia asked. They were past the roses now, past the stone fountain where water caught the last light of day. "You must have seen 1,000 people in danger. Why stop for me?" Alessandro stopped walking. His dark eyes held hers with the kind of intensity that made her remember why everyone in Philadelphia feared him, and also why she had stopped being afraid. "I saw you stop those men in the alley," he said, each word deliberate as a vow. "I watched you choose courage when you had every reason to choose survival. Most people choose survival. They shrink. They disappear. But you stepped between violence and innocence." He paused. "It reminded me that power is not about fear. It is not about control. It is about what you do when no one is watching and everything costs you." Mia's breath came shallow. "And now?" "Now I am standing in front of you, not as someone who saved you, but as someone asking if you will let me be part of the life you built yourself." His hand found hers. The touch was gentle. Asking, not taking. "I do not need to save you anymore, Mia. I need to know you, if you will let me." She studied his face in the fading light. The scar that ran from his eye to his cheekbone. The lines around his mouth that had softened in 6 months. The hands that had orchestrated Preston Mercer's destruction and Victoria Ashford's humiliation, now offering nothing but presence. "I might consider it," Mia said, and she was smiling, and he was smiling, and the air between them felt like the moment right before everything good happens. 1 year later, the boy was sick. Not badly, just the ordinary kind of sick that childhood brought. A cold that moved through the apartment like a small storm, leaving runny noses and coughs in its wake. "Dad, my head hurts," Oliver said at breakfast. He was sitting at the kitchen table in Alessandro's house, in the kitchen that overlooked the garden where his parents had learned to want each other. His voice was uncertain, the way children's voices became when they did not know if pain was normal or if it meant something worse. Both Mia and Alessandro froze. That old terror flickered through them simultaneously, that impossible fear that had lived in their chests for so long that the absence of it still felt like a trap. Then Mia moved. She checked his temperature. 38.2 Celsius. A fever, ordinary and predictable. She made him soup with vegetables cut small enough that he could manage them with his small teeth. She tucked him into the couch in the study with a blanket his grandfather had brought from Milan, and she sat beside him until he slept, one hand resting on his forehead. Normal. Safe. Childhood as it was supposed to be, not as a desperate escape from something worse. That evening, Alessandro found her on the terrace. The city lights spread below them like scattered diamonds. She was wearing the blue dress still, though she had many dresses now. She chose the blue one most often. "A year ago I was kneeling in this house," he said quietly, "helpless, watching you save my son by seeing what I was too afraid to see. You taught me that true strength is not controlling everything. It is trusting the right people. It is believing that someone you love can stand beside you without needing to be held. Mia turned to face him. The wind moved her hair. He had not touched her yet, but he was looking at her like she was the only real thing in a world of shadows. "And you taught me that protection does not mean ownership," she said. "That I could be loved as an equal, not a possession. That a man with power could choose to make himself small enough to listen." Alessandro reached for her hand. He was not on one knee. He was not offering a ring, though a ring would come later, simple and gold, chosen together on a Tuesday afternoon in a jewelry store on Walnut Street. Instead, he was just holding her hand and saying the thing that mattered most. "You were never the woman I saved," he said. "You were always the woman who saved herself. I was just lucky enough to witness it." She kissed him then, gentle and certain, and the air tasted like autumn and possibility and the particular sweetness of a life built not on rescue, but on choice. Sometimes the most powerful people in the world are rendered helpless by the things that matter most. And sometimes the people we dismiss as nobody possess the exact courage the moment demands. Preston Mercer and Victoria Ashford believed power came from control, from fear, from breaking people into submission. They were wrong about everything. True power, the kind that changes lives and builds futures, comes from one person seeing another's humanity and choosing to protect it, not possess it. Mia Reynolds entered Alessandro Calabrese's world not as a victim seeking rescue, but as a warrior who had already survived her own hell. She stood between violence and innocence when she had every reason to walk away. That single choice rippled outward, saving not just a teenager in an alley, but two boys who needed someone to see their pain, and a man who had forgotten that empires mean nothing if you lose what matters. Sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. If this story moved you, drop a like and share it with someone who needs to remember their strength. Subscribe because tomorrow we have another story about the moment everything changes. What story should we tell next? Drop your ideas in the comments below. We wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We will see you again in the next video.